All right, everybody, welcome back to Skywatchers Radio, and yes, we are live. I know that a lot of folks this last 2 weeks were messaging me on private, and they're like, what the hell, man? What the hell? I gave up a hot date.
When we're not here.
Yeah, I gave up this hot date to listen in, and you guys are not even live? Screw you guys, man. But no, we're live, everybody. We're live.
All our listeners should hang out in the chat room, by the way, because there is a chat room, and it's been very quiet lately, and that makes me sad.
Because they're kind of mad at us because, you know, we weren't live the last couple of weeks. But we're here now. We're live, and we have our guest on the line, Mr. John Polk. And John, of course, is a Reverend who wrote a book about Yahweh being an alien. How does that work? Welcome to the show,
because
John.
Jesus is a hybrid.
Well, we'll get to that. Thank you very much. John, welcome to Skywatchers Radio, my friend. Thank you so much for being on here with us tonight.
Hey, it's our second show together, and I'm excited.
You know what?
That's
it is
right.
our second.
Technically,
It is technically our second show together. That's absolutely correct. And you know what? I'll tell you what, man. I had so much fun at the MUFON convention. Meeting you, meeting Alejandro, meeting everybody who was over there was phenomenal. Your interview was one of the most fun interviews because, and I'm not just saying that, you know, to kiss your ass because you're on the air with us. That's not why I'm saying it. The reason I say it is because I've been saying that, you know, God is an alien for years, and everybody looks at me cross-eyed like I'm crazy. And to hear somebody write a book about it and, you know, say, it echoes some of the things I've been saying. Now, I never said Yahweh or the Anunnaki, but I do think that God is, by the mere definition of God, he's an alien. And, you know, your book, I'm dying to get through it and go through it and read it because I think it's going to be enlightening. Especially for the fact that you threw in a lot of stuff in there that I'm interested in, like the Anunnaki and stuff like that. But let's delve right into it because, you know, some of the audience here have not seen the interview yet. They have not seen the video. They didn't, you know, check out the MUFON convention. They weren't there. So they weren't, like, standing around gawking at us while we were talking to you. Tell the audience a little bit about the book and exactly what the book is all about.
Okay, so Yahweh, the biblical God, is an alien. Yahweh, in effect, is Enlil of the Anunnaki. I've been using the term creator God aliens. Creator God aliens are ascended masters in the universe that fall, or they look at a planet like the Earth and they see potential for hybridization programs, also for purposes of mining it for its precious gems, ores, raw materials, etc. So Anu and the Anunnaki descended from the skies to the planet Earth, perhaps even millions of years ago. And they needed gold to repair the atmosphere of their planet, Nibiru. Now, there's a lot of debate and contention. Is Nibiru kind of like the Death Star on Star Wars, or is it an actual planet? In the end, they needed gold, and they were mining it themselves, and they realized that it was such a toil and taxing on their bodies to physically mine gold and other precious minerals from the earth plane. So they decided to mix their DNA with the indigenous species of hominids, with more like Neanderthal man back then. At first, Enlil just wanted to flood the earth and kill them all and create his own model human. And Enki and their sister Ninmah, who they both had children with, believe it or not, within the Anunnaki pantheon, approached Enlil and said, you know, we don't have to kill off this indigenous species. We can mix our DNA with them and create a model worker so that we don't have to do all the mining of the gold ourselves. So that's actually what they did.
How did you connect the dots between Yahweh and the Anunnaki?
Okay, so a number of years ago, Enlil first came to me as Enoch, who is also known as the Archangel Metatron, who is in effect the scribe of the gods. Enoch was actually the great-grandfather of Noah. And Noah, along with Jesus Christ and Buddha and Huangdi, the first emperor of China, and even Merlin the magician, were all virgin births. So first he came to me as Enoch, a couple years removed. My conscious mind started to receive downloads that he was in effect Yahweh, who is the biblical God portrayed in the Old Testament. And then a couple years after that, I figured out this whole time that Enlil was communicating through Yahweh and through Enoch to me, really masking himself until I was more spiritually mature enough to be able to understand and fathom. This was the great Anunnaki elder who basically first started to create human beings on this planet.
Wow, and even Merlin the magician. How did you connect that dot?
Yeah, it's in the literature. Merlin was supposedly capable of levitating stones, and then he actually helped build Stonehenge, Woodhenge, and the Superhenge. They have since found all these henges all through that part of England that they didn't even know before. But now with the ground-penetrating radar that came about in the 1950s, they're finally starting to find all these other henges. But also, Merlin's function was to get all the people of the British Isles to stand behind King Arthur. That's how he was able to draw the sword from the stone and some other miraculous feats, because they had to make him almost superhuman so that people would want to worship him as their king. And it worked.
Now, a lot of folks, I've read the story of King Arthur and the Sorcerer's Stone and Merlin the Magician, and, I've always taken that to be mythology. I never thought that it actually was real, per se. How far apart are we talking about from when the Anunnaki landed here to when Merlin and how far apart was that exactly chronologically? Talking about maybe millions of years, right?
Yeah, the Annals of Cambrai date this probably back, I don't know. I'm making an educated guess. Perhaps maybe 1,000 or more years. I can't be exact, so don't hold me to that. But the Anunnaki, in my opinion, have been on this planet for perhaps even millions of years. Michael Cremo, who has authored a very world-famous book called Forbidden Archaeology, and if you've ever seen his stand-up lecture series, he's absolutely genius and fascinating. He actually has an artifact that shows intelligence as far as artwork and artistry and craftsmanship in this little artifact that he has found. And he found it in North America. Or let me rephrase that. It was found in North America. And somehow he got his hands on this object, and he carries it with him to his lectures. And this object is dated at 2.8 billion years old. And it's very clear that it was made under some kind of intelligence. Were they extraterrestrials? Did they create a human-like hybrid, 2.8 billion years ago? I can't be sure. But the artifact itself is a statement and a testament to how old and how long the human creation story has been going on this planet.
Well, people do say that the Prometheus movie might be very close to what's actually happened.
I've heard that, yeah.
Comment on that.
I know the story behind Prometheus, but I have never seen the movie. I'm sure that it would be fascinating.
Well, the very beginning, he shows...
Absolutely worth the watch.
It's a good movie, especially the beginning. He shows the alien race that lands on Earth, and one of them takes a potion which is going to destroy his body, and he falls into a waterfall, and his body disintegrates into the waterfall, giving water DNA and creating all life on Earth.
Okay, yeah, I have to watch it, so that's required reading for me now.
Yeah, required watching, yeah.
Nice. Worth it. It's completely worth it. I thought it was a great movie. I don't care what anybody says.
Absolutely was.
Yeah, really was. And you know what? I've interviewed Michael Cremo before. Anybody who is interested in this topic absolutely should read his book, Forbidden Archaeology. He's a very interesting dude to talk to, and his research it's right up there. It really is.
Well, and
he's
he
found
loves
some fascinating things.
Yeah, he loves to
argue he does.
With archaeologists. He loves it, man. He relishes it. He foams at the mouth over it. And the number one reason why is because he's right, but he's also a genius. And so, try and argue with a genius who can back it up with actual scientific data himself. So, he would not be fun to argue with if you're a mainstream archaeologist, that's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, how does he go about dating the subject of becoming? We're talking about billions of years. How do you exactly date something billions of years old?
Radiocarbon dating is more of it's kind of outdated now, and I forget the term of it's a form of radiocarbon dating, but it's much more evolved and much more accurate. I can't recall exactly what it is, but if you read the book, or actually, my mom gave me a copy of his stand-up lecture series on VHS tape, just to give you an idea how long he's been around talking about this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, and he talks about it, and I can't remember the name of the actual dating process that they employ.
Interesting stuff. I'm gonna have to look more into into this object. It always baffles my mind when science dates stuff, because I'm like, how do they get to certain numbers? Like 4.7 billion years is what people think the Earth is, right? How do they get to that number? It could have been even longer than that. They say the universe is 13 billion years old. Now they're saying maybe 25 billion years old. How do they get to these numbers? It's just is mind-boggling. Now, going back to the book, though, with Yahweh being one of the Anunnaki, is he a being that is still alive, or is he passed on, as far as you know?
He's very much still alive. Yeah, he's definitely still alive.
Wow, he's an old dude.
Is he a clone of
he?
Is he a clone of his former self? Is he still really that live? Yeah.
I don't think he's a clone, but if we go to the Sumerian Kings list, the Sumerian Kings list will list all of the kings of Mesopotamia, and some of these kings lived to be 35,000 to over 40,000 years old. So
I want to know what their diet is.
Monatomic gold, probably.
They have Anunnaki blood pulsing through their veins.
How come we can't find that in all the blood types that we test?
It's possible that the Rh negative is possibly part of the Anunnaki bloodline.
I thought that was reptilian, everybody was saying.
Well, isn't
I don't know.
Anunnaki reptilian?
They're shapeshifters, I do know that.
Okay, how do
we know that? Yeah, how do we know that?
Yeah, hold up. How do we know?
If you look at the iconography of, especially in Mesopotamia, you'll see them presented as bird-like. You'll also see them presented as human-like, with big beards, wristwatches, long hair, and also highly evolved extraterrestrials. They know how to manipulate their mitochondrial DNA. If you know how to electronically phase your mitochondrial DNA, you can in effect change your DNA, and thus you can actually shapeshift. And that actually came to me in a dream, and I've thrown that at some other scientists, and they say it's within the scientific possibility of it actually being feasible and that it can be done. So I tend to believe that shape-shifting for them is something that is very easy, and it's something that they've been able to do for thousands of years.
My question was, you talked about Merlin being able to move stones. My question to you is, in any of your research, do you think that he used sound technology to do this?
I do. I do.
Okay. Can you go into that a little bit more, like what your research has found? Because I've read some interesting things about if you can use sound to manipulate the weight of objects, and then you can either pass through them or move them.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny you bring that up, Crystal, before you answer that, John. I saw a documentary, and I've seen it a couple times now, but I was watching it again a couple nights ago on YouTube called Don't Watch This Video, or Don't Watch This Film. I don't know if you've seen that. And of course I watched it.
Yeah, I saw a link for that one.
In there, they actually they talk about this very same thing where they used sound waves to levitate stones, and that's how the pyramids were built also. John, expand on that, please.
Yeah, there's a number of different ways to do it. There's acoustic levitation, where basically going back to what I was talking about, pulsing an electromagnetic field, you can render objects weightless, and you can also make them disappear and reappear. And then there's also what you call auditive levitation, where you match the sound frequency of matter and basically render an object weightless. So it's very common to see, Merlin the Magician, Zeus, Thor, and other creator god aliens with some kind of kinetic weapon or handheld device. And I believe that these devices had multiple functions, but one of the functions was for them to be able to levitate stones. Because it's pretty clear, at the MUFON conference, I ended up getting in an argument with this scientist who lives here locally in Orlando. I've met before. And he's just so totally against ancient aliens and, anything he can do. He loves to fight tooth and nail with me over this stuff. But I always go right for the jugular. I go to the Trilithon in Baalbek, Lebanon, that has a stone that is perfectly mathematically cut and stacked and lifted, also with star constellations in mind that weighs 4 million pounds.
Ooh. Wow.
I'm sorry. There's another stone in the same structure that weighs 2.8 million pounds. Now, they've had they had this community college go out to Easter Island and do research on moving the Moai. And there was probably like over 100 students, and they were using ropes and pulleys, which they supposedly did not have back when the Moai were being created on Easter Island. And they were able, and rollers. There's no trees on Easter Island, but they brought their own trees for rollers, and they were only able to move one of the Moai a half an inch. That was it. And it's like, come on, people. 4 million pounds. Number one, where did they even quarry the rock? They can't find the rock. They can't find the rock quarry for Baalbek, Lebanon. They can't find it. Also, where are you going to find a stone that's bigger than 4 million pounds and then cut it down mathematically into 4 million pounds? It's just.
It's called Stone Mountain, and it's in the Carolinas, I believe.
What?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of?
I was like, wait, what?
Okay, where do you find a 4 million pound stone? It's real easy. You can find them. They're out there. There's stones out there that are that large, like Stone Mountain. If you Google it, you'll see what I'm talking about.
No, and I agree. I agree, but with that part of the world, they couldn't figure out where they got the stones from in that part of the world. So, but
yeah, I was just about to say, did they come over to America, get the stone levitated across the ocean to where he's talking about? Is that how that went down?
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
Or they're playing Backstreet Boys to get them over here. Or like, how does that happen?
No. Here, I'm thinking it might be a meteoroid that actually, a meteor that might have crashed, which caused the mass extinction, and that's what they used to carve it.
Plausible.
To carve it?
Well, to shape it to where it is exactly the mathematical requirements that you were saying.
Okay, so let's say they did find the stone. How did they transport it? And how did they lift it?
Who says it wasn't there in the first place and they just filled the sand around it, where the holes where they cut?
Well, it's pretty clear that these blocks were stacked. They're in different, they're all in certain mathematical geometric shapes because they needed to be for them to be able to complete the structure and make it, pretty much a perfect square. So anyway, in
that case, I give up. You win.
It is debatable. It is debatable, but they've actually done experiments. They've had engineers go to Machu Picchu and stand on the top of that mountain and go, there's no way we could even get our equipment up here in the first place to even begin to create these structures, So I thought,
it's one of the reasons why. That is a great argument. It's one of the reasons why I love talking to Christopher Dunn, and so why I've always been so fascinated with his work, because he approached the building of the Great Pyramids from a perspective of an engineer. No other vested interests. He looked at them like an engineer because that's what he was for, the majority of his life. So the things that he has to say about the Great Pyramids and what their purpose is, it's fascinating because he's not coming from this from science or archaeology. He's coming at this from someone who builds things. So it's really, I like it. I like it when we approach things like that. It makes it fun.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Crystal.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, John.
What's interesting about Christopher Dunn is he's conducted this experiment where imagine a Y, okay? Down one of the arms of the Y, you pour dilute hydrochloric acid. Dilute hydrochloric acid down one of the tubes of the Y, if you can picture a Y with one arm on each side going up. And then in the other side, hydrated zinc. You mix those two together, and it comes up with hydrogen. Well, guess what? The king's chamber and the queen's chamber were used for a similar function in the Great Pyramid. They can find evidence of dilute hydrochloric acid going down one of these shafts and hydrated zinc going down one of these other shafts, mixing in the king's chamber and in effect creating a microwave, two of them, one that points towards Orion and one that points towards Sirius. So he was talking that this thing basically was creating a microwave that was shot up into a satellite, definitely towards those certain stars, and out into outer space. Also, that there's water from the Nile that flows underneath the Great Pyramid, and it creates a low level standing wave from the water undulating underneath the pyramid. It creates a low frequency standing wave that permeates through the pyramid and helps to resonate this energy to shoot those beams off into outer space. And this is his postulation, and I tend to believe that he's completely correct.
I'm waiting for someone to debate him, on this point, because he pretty much calls it a power plant. That's what the pyramid is. He says it's a power plant. I mean, and he goes into where the quarries are and how they built it. I mean, he gets real technical with it. So it's really fun to read his books and talk to him, because I'm waiting for someone to debate him and tell him that he's wrong.
I'm waiting for somebody to try to do a scientific experiment and prove it right.
Well, I mean, I almost think we probably broke it.
It's a possibility,
I know there's been some work done inside the pyramid to find the chambers and this, that, and the other. So, I mean, it's not in the same condition as it was. So I almost think I don't even know if we'd be able to turn it on. We'd probably blow up the earth if we tried.
Yeah, I don't think that it's possible to turn them on anymore. Right around the end of the last ice age, I believe that we had an intercontinental network of pyramids transmitting power and energy from one pyramid to the other. Nikola Tesla had recreated this concept himself. He went out to Colorado and built a tower where about 1/3 of the tower was underground and about 2/3 of the tower was above ground. And he got these light bulbs, and without any wires, he's walking away from the tower and sticking them into the ground. They all had like a steel post on the bottom of them. So he'd stick these light bulbs in the ground, and he was able to light them up without wires remotely from this tower up to over a mile away. And his whole vision was for the entire planet to have free electricity, and also to be able to broadcast, he used the term broadcast, but broadcast this electricity to Mars. Now this is, Nikola Tesla.
Why Mars?
Because it was in the realm of scientific possibility that you could actually send the electricity from one planet to another. Now, he received this information supposedly from an extraterrestrial that he was channeling from Mars, and that's where he actually got the name the Mad Scientist. That's where it all came from. And he was heavily criticized by his peers and never won the Nobel Prize, which he clearly should have won a Nobel Prize.
He should have definitely.
That is crazy. See, that's what literally drives me crazy. When brilliant people tell you how they got their ideas, maybe we should listen, because they're brilliant people.
Remember, Nikola Tesla was also working on a saucer-shaped flying object. So there's, like we've talked about it on the show here before, and one of my beliefs of what happened at Roswell was that we were back engineering stuff from the Nazi days, mixed with Nikola Tesla's, back engineered or engineering that he left behind. And we accidentally crashed at Roswell, and it was one of ours that, we were test flying. That's kind of been a theory of mine, and a theory of a lot of folks out there for a few years now. And I think that's very plausible. And I think that, I think he was channeling some kind of extraterrestrial race. And the Nazis, for a lot of people that are into the whole Hanabu project and all that stuff, the lore is that they also were in contact, telepathically with an extraterrestrial race. And that's what they were working on as well. I mean, if you do the timeline, the Nazi war ends in the 40s. Nikola Tesla dies in the 40s. Roswell happens in the 40s. Everything happened in that 10-year period, which leads me to believe that it's all connected to each other. And that's one of the biggest things, I think one of the biggest secrets the government has, is that they were literally putting together technologies taken from aliens by the Nazis and by Nikola Tesla, who was, working on his own thing, and they mixed it together, and that's really what crashed at Roswell. To me, that's a bigger conspiracy than an alien craft just randomly crashing at Roswell. I mean, that's just my theory.
It all does go together. It does. Mm-hmm. It makes perfect sense. But here's something to think about. In 1941 in Missouri, they found a downed UFO. and supposedly it had occupants on board. Some died, one or two lived. In 1942, in the San Bernardino Valley in California, same case scenario. Another UFO crashed. Supposedly there was occupants on board. Some died, some lived. Back in the 1930s, Mussolini knew about extraterrestrials in flying in the skies above Italy. He knew all about it. In 1937, a UFO crashed in the Black Forest in Poland. Poland being one of Germany's neighboring countries, they went in there and commandeered the craft, and supposedly it had occupants on board. Now, before Werner von Braun died, he admitted that they had help, the Nazi SS and the Anunnaki Society, that they had help from E.T. He said that before he died.
Wait a minute, which society did you say?
Anunnaki Society. They're basically the SS Paranormal Division.
Okay, I was going to say, what happened to the Thule Society?
There was a bunch of societies within the Nazi regime, if you will.
Oh, okay. All right.
But that one specifically dealt with exotic technologies, extraterrestrial spacecraft, things like that. You know, even Heinrich Himmler had a crystal skull.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, they knew that the esoteric and the enigmatic and the occult world and all that, they actually traveled to India. They traveled out to Tibet. They traveled all around the world gaining this esoteric knowledge and information because they knew there was something to it. They also traveled to the South Pole. And in my estimation, they somehow found out or discovered that there is actually a portal into inner Earth or Middle Earth, which actually leads you to another dimension.
Now that's an
Wouldn't
interesting.
surprise me.
That's an interesting way to look at it, because of course a lot of people who believe in the hollow Earth theory believe it's in this dimension, just inside the Earth itself. So you're saying that there's no hollow Earth; that it is a portal that leads you to another dimension.
Yeah, you know. So I was telling you earlier, Angel, about I own a DJ company, and one of my speakers broke. And so I go to the guy who I bought it from a couple years ago, and he's from Puerto Rico. And most Puerto Ricans that I know that just live in America, they don't know the whole UFO story. But Puerto Ricans that lived in Puerto Rico and then moved over here, their tradition is steeped. It's richly steeped in UFO history and lore, and it's something that they just accept as fact. But we were talking about this very thing, and I said, now, if you're a drilling company and you're looking for precious ores, minerals, stones, oil, etc., you know, you're going to just drill into a bunch of rocks.
Right.
But if you are like a shamanic elder, or just even a really spiritually enlightened human being, you can go through these portals into inner Earth and actually end up in another dimension. For example, Xibalba was actually the Mayan name for the underworld. And a couple times a year, Lord Bacal, and on the top of his sarcophagus, the whatever you call that stone that goes on top of the sarcophagus is an inscription of him inside of a spaceship. But in effect, it's not so much a spaceship. It was actually going into Xibalba, and Xibalba literally translates not to underworld, but according to Dr. Linda Sheely, who studied the Maya for like 30 years, that it literally translates into the Milky Way.
Whoa, okay.
So they found a way to traverse their body, mind, spirit, and their space-time vehicle by traversing the Earth spirit also. So if you're a scientist and you're just digging a hole, you're going to run into a bunch of rocks.
Right.
But if, the Zuni, the Hopi, Pueblo tribes, even the Hickory Apache all believe that they didn't come across Alaska from the Bering Strait. They believe that they came from inner Earth to the surface of the Earth after the last ice age.
That's interesting. My goodness. I would have to get Dennis Crenshaw and give him a lesson, because he still believes you could dig all the way into the inner Earth and find the actual hollow Earth.
Well, maybe
beings.
he'll let him. Maybe he'll find the portal one day. So then we'll know somebody up close and personal who's actually gone and come back.
Now, do you think there's any truth to Admiral Byrd? I was going to say, do you think there's any truth to Admiral Byrd's story?
I absolutely do. And the reason is because he was threatened. It's like, if you don't shut up about this, your whole military career is over. So he was risking his neck and his family's neck to talk about it. And eventually he quit talking about it because he knew he would lose his career forever. And ironically, that happened, in 1947, the same year, the crash in Roswell. Also, the term flying saucer was coined by a UFO sighting near Mount Rainier in Washington State that same year. And also, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in
those Dead Sea Scrolls, man.
And it goes, in the Book of Enoch, who is of the Anunnaki, a huge portion of what you call the Apocryphy text or the Pseudepigrapha, which are volumes that were kept out of the Bible. The original Bible contained many, many volumes that are not in the King James Version, and there's over 50 King James versions of the Bible today. But that was all original text in the original Bible that has been since censored and retranslated. I mean, Aramaic was the original language it was written in, and it's far from its original.
Let me ask you, John, because I'm sure that you've delved heavily into the Gnostic Gospels as well and all that good stuff. So what's your take on Mary in relationship to Yahweh?
I believe that, and I believe we talked about this on the show that we did, what was it, on the 28th of August?
Correct. Yep.
That Mary was chosen to have a human-alien hybrid, hand-sculpted deity, half the DNA of Enlil of the Anunnaki, but also half of her DNA. And the reason is to make Jesus Christ more human and humane, because Enlil was very capable of just killing people. And I think he realized that this approach, he's just going to lose followers. And the Gnostics, Crystal, to your point, believed that Yahweh, or Enlil, but Yahweh, in effect, was evil. And they didn't want to deify him as their god. That's for sure.
Now, I'm going to ask you guys a question, especially you, John. See if you know this right off the top. Do you know what the genetic symbol for the DNA resembles?
Yeah, the medical sign.
No, no, the medical sign.
Wait. Say that again. The DNA sign.
Yeah, the genetic symbol for DNA resembles what exactly?
Oh, I don't know.
The word Yah, as in Yahweh.
Ooh!
You just made his day.
Yeah, but hang on. But
did I just blow your mind or what?
But that's English, okay? Guys, come on. That's in English, which didn't exist.
No. Yah is a Hebrew word, my friend.
Okay, so you're telling me it's the Hebrew letters that it symbolizes.
Here. Look at that picture I just sent. I'm going to send you guys.
Oh, snap.
Hang on, I haven't seen it yet.
So amusing.
Where is it?
And who is not to say that English is not the universal language? They were made to learn the language.
You're really going to go there?
Hey, it's on every planet in Star Trek.
Okay. You got to send me the link because I still haven't seen it online.
It's in the chat. It's in the PSN chat.
Oh yeah, no. You got to send it to me on Skype. Please.
There you go. I just Skyped it to you.
The PSN chat is never mentioned.
Okay, so here's the funny part about this. This is in English, which didn't exist.
But it still says Yah.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
Explain that.
Wait, why doesn't it count? Why doesn't it count just because it's in English?
Yeah.
Explain that.
Because the language didn't exist then.
It does not matter.
They tried to create a corporate. Yeah,
they knew it didn't exist. They knew that they would have it to where we could, figure it out now.
Exactly. Remember, supposedly the mythology is that they confused the language, right? That was the whole mythology.
I'm just giving up on you guys on this one. All right, fine.
I'm watching Seth facepalm and just shake his head.
I'm pulling a Picard facepalm, okay?
You try to explain why it says Yah.
I don't know. That's still interesting, though. I mean, even I understand that it's in English, and I understand that we're talking about, but that's still that's one heck of in the context of this conversation. That's
right?
Interesting. You can't say it's not. Out of all the DNA symbols, really, that's what it really. We've lost John. John is fed up with us. John doesn't like us anymore.
Did we really lose him? What?
I don't know what happened, but I'm back. So
John's mind blew up after the revelation of Yah being the symbol of DNA, and his guy couldn't handle it.
I think we stirred up the ghost in the machine. That's what
that was.
We did. That was it.
That's too funny.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stay out of this.
Yeah, please.
I'm just
mute
like,
mute
wow.
thyself. Just mute thyself.
Yeah.
There you go, Chris. Yeah.
I know it's good. It works for me.
Now I have several interpretations of who Jesus was and stuff, and I've never really looked at him being probably a hybrid. That's new to me. I've heard the term that Jesus was an alien before, and people made that claim that he was an alien. Is there? I mean, other than the miracles that he performed, supposedly, is there any literature that will point to us, that are interested in learning more about this, that could give us a hint that he really was a hybrid?
There is some literature out there. I couldn't exactly tell you how to go about finding it, but what I have learned is any kind of history of how Jesus came to this planet. You can find 1,000 different stories with 1,000 different interpretations. So only one of them is completely correct. Now, what I told you, I never read anywhere. I received that. So I either received some bad information, some disinformation, or something that's completely correct. Nobody can prove it. But I go back to the most famous virgin births in world history that I know of. Merlin the Magician, Buddha, Noah.
Wait a minute, Buddha had a mother because he was originally Lord Siddhartha, who then became Buddha, the Enlightened One.
Yeah, but his mother was impregnated by a giant elephant god. Okay, so there's the father.
And Buddha being a little bit chubby.
Only because I also have I do a lot of studying in kind of feminism and the history of goddesses and all that kind of stuff. So my only issue with the virgin birth is it's like the purity of women. It's like we're not allowed to have sex. We're not allowed to get it on. This bothers me because that story just keeps repeating over and over again. Why couldn't she actually have had sex, got impregnated? Like, why so many virgin stories? It's driving me nuts. I'm sorry. And I could go deeper into that.
And it's not only Jesus, Horus.
I guess my
also.
real question, maybe a more interesting question would be to John, have you heard anything about Yahweh having a daughter?
No, but Enlil is Yahweh, but Enki, who is his actual older half-brother, they both had babies with their sister Ninmah. Why? It's very common for extraterrestrials to want to keep the bloodline all alien blood, so that's why they would have sex with their own siblings. Even King Tut at one point married his own grandmother. So just to give you... I know.
Whoa,
that's just gross, man. Now, this has been a mind-blowing episode so far. We've all blown each other's minds here. Wait a second. Anyway, and it's been all about this Yahweh thing, huh? That's crazy.
Yeah. You said that just to make the other guy cringe inside, didn't you?
Of course, that's exactly what I say. Everything I say now is to make him cringe. No, but seriously though, I mean, in all honesty though, when I first saw that, because look, I saw that on that video. I'm not gonna lie, it was the video "Don't Watch This Film," and then I went and researched it, and I was like, oh my god, it really does spell out the word Yah, and
that's a very interesting coincidence. It just is. It
makes sense to me.
John,
that's all I'm saying.
It does. John, I have a question for you, and it's going to be kind of a jumbled question because I did a lot of research on the Anunnaki and Lil and Enki years and years and years ago. But I remember researching something that kind of was related to the way that they spelled things. And my research pointed to, I think it was just one crazy thing that I read, so that's why I'm asking you. It said that Eden was actually spelled E.den and was actually a laboratory. Have you heard of that before?
I have. I've heard that concept before, where the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve supposedly were, and they, plucked the tree of knowledge and ate the sacred fruit, tempted by the serpent. but also that it was like a genetics laboratory. I have heard that. I don't know if it's true or not, but I have definitely heard about it.
Interesting. Okay, I just wanted to know if I was the only one who had read that crazy article that I don't even know where it is now.
But this is interesting.
I've never read that article, but I've heard that theory before. By the way, sorry, John.
No, so the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, they all take ownership of Adam and Eve in their own, biblical texts.
Right.
But not all three can be correct, of course. But what's interesting, Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, and Cain killed Abel, and I think it's in the Jewish Talmud where after he killed Abel, his brother, he walks to a small town where there are other people. So if
nobody talks about that, huh? Where those people
Adam
showed
and
up?
Eve were the first people on this planet, then they would have to have sex with their kids over and over and over and over, and then where did they come up with black people and Asians and
Yeah, and for the amount of inbreeding, very few retards. Because
why did you? No, stop it.
I'm just saying, that's a serious scientific fact. Inbreeding leads to retardation. Look, I'm not making that up. It's science. Okay, it's science. But, no, you're absolutely right, though, John. I mean, they do walk to this town. There are other people there. This is something that religious institutions don't like to talk about because they want us to believe that these two white people in the jungle created all life, which included blacks, Asians, Indians, everybody.
It just doesn't make any sense. It literally doesn't make any sense. It's like after Noah, after the flood. Like, really? That's a lot of getting it on, y'all. That's a lot.
Right. But here's the thing, though. In our own DNA, there's like how many thousands of junk DNA that look like somebody was making mistakes along the way before Homo sapien was created correctly?
Yeah. Now, what's your take on that too, John? Because, okay, I have heard that, scientists keep trying to say now, they keep backtracking saying that they didn't mean that it was junk DNA. All they were saying was it's some DNA and they don't know what it does. Whatever, that's fine. But there's a lot of it. So what's your take on that, John?
That they just don't know how to interpret it. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Some of it may have very little function, but I believe a lot of it has been done through such advanced DNA technology and breeding that, our scientists with our primitive technology today are just beginning to learn how to understand all of that. Sir Francis Crick decoded the double helix back in the 50s or 60s.
Right.
But still was a long way away from actually understanding all of our genetics. So there's a couple markers within our genetics. HAR1 is what makes us different than chimpanzees. On a DNA scale, we're like within 3 or 4% of a chimpanzee. Our organs are very similar. Pretty much most of our body and our physical makeup is very similar to a chimpanzee, but then you throw in HAR1 and that makes us more human than the monkeys. And then also there's a FOX gene, which is responsible for our voice box. And then there's VMAT number 2, vesicular monoamine transporter number 2. And this was discovered by Dr. Dean Hamer in 2005. And it's basically the God gene. It's something that all humans have. Some humans just aren't even. Some humans will never ever be influenced by this gene just because of maybe upbringing, or this gene just for whatever reason doesn't affect their mind like most humans do. But this gene was placed. These 3 genes specifically were placed out of sequence. I mean, if you take the DNA strand and you put like a line through it in 3 different places, that's the way that these genetic markers look in a DNA strand. They look like they were placed there. What Crystal said about it was obvious that there had been some mistakes made along the way. The Anunnaki tampered with the DNA of primitive man, Neanderthal man, and mixing their genetics with Neanderthal man. And it must have taken, I don't know how many different tries before they found
trial and error. It's trial and error, and you make mistakes. Yeah. Now I read an article. I read an article not long ago that said that there was a mystery of 145 different what they called alien genes the scientists discovered some DNA is not from our ancestors, and they say it could change how we think of evolution altogether because of these 145 alien genes. And I like the term alien genes, not godly genes. Alien genes.
Aliens.
That's what all right.
Aliens, y'all. Aliens.
Not Levi's. Not Wranglers.
No, I mean, what's your take on that? The fact that scientists actually call it alien genes to begin with. What's your take on that, John?
I believe it. I believe it. They're genes that they can't readily explain or identify or completely understand what the function and purpose is of them. So they call them alien. Some of them are probably very explainable, and others, I believe all of us have at least some watered-down version of alien DNA contained within our genetics.
I wouldn't be surprised. And it's also why it makes intelligent design, the science, so absolutely fascinating that scientists are actually talking about this. I mean, because if you look into intelligent design, it is not creationism. If you think it's creationism, then you are dumb and you need to go and read something. Intelligent design is basically a whole bunch of really smart people and all those science people that are basically saying the human body is entirely too complex for it just to have happened. Like it doesn't make any sense scientifically, like somebody made us. They don't talk about who made us, they just talk strictly about the science, and they're telling us that the science says some intelligence behind to how we were created.
That's what Sir Francis Crick said. He used an analogy. If you pass a hurricane through a junkyard, you're more likely mathematically to assemble a jumbo jet than you are by random, chance over a billion years time period to assemble the human DNA the way it was constructed.
Wow. Wow. That's a serious analogy.
David Wilcock said that the mathematical probability of human beings climbed out of the oceans, millions and billions of years ago, and then one day evolved into human beings. He said the madness that is required to begin to understand that is, and this is his analogy, you're in an airplane, you have $1,100 bills, you cut them up all into small pieces, you throw them out of the plane. When they fall to the earth, they reassemble themselves in the exact paper note that they were before you cut them up and threw them out of the plane in the first place.
Did the mathematical equation, it will be the same. Okay, I got you now.
It's just how infinitesimal the odds were that we just evolved by chance, as opposed to being.
And you know what? When you say it like that too, it makes it very interesting that is our story. Like mainstream science wants us to believe that kind of insanity versus there was an intelligent race that was here and we were created. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why is that more easier, or is that like not easy to accept? But this random chance shit is everybody's like, yeah. Not that there might be a race that was smarter, they made us, and then they left. I mean, and plus, like everybody, like a lot of people believe in religion and God and all that sort of thing. So it's like literally, it's blowing my mind that that's what we believe, but not the other. Why?
Yeah,
it's kind of
agree.
insulting, actually, to be honest.
Richard Dolan, I saw him speak at Big Bear, the Alien Snowfest in February of this year, and he said something to the effect that, there's all these critics that criticize the government for lying about absolutely everything. But the one thing that most of these critics agree with the government about is that there are no UFOs or extraterrestrials.
Right.
And that's his whole argument. He's like, you think they lie about absolutely everything, and the biggest lie they could possibly lie about, you believe they're telling the truth. He's like, just listen to yourselves.
Yeah, it kind of blows my mind too, especially when conspiracy theories that everybody thought weren't true are proven true, like all the mind control experiments the CIA used to do. Like, okay, that was conspiracy theory. Now everybody's like, oh yeah, they really did that. But you think that your government today is this benevolent thing that's going to take care of you? Really? You don't really? You think that was just a thing they did in the 50s and then they got over it? I don't understand at all. I don't get it.
Now, here's a question I'm going to throw your way, John, because you are a reverend, and for a long time the church believed this to be a fact until somebody came along and said, no, it's not true. What are your thoughts on the flat Earth theory?
I think it's total garbage.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm being nice. I don't understand how, I just don't get it. I don't even want to talk about it.
See, he's upset about it as I am.
Manuel needs to talk to you.
I'm still not 100% sold that it's pure garbage, because I've seen some videos, man, and they present a very intriguing argument. And the church,
but not accurate.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing: for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, that's what the church believed.
The church didn't have telescopes.
Yes, I understand that. But looking up to the sky could be a hologram that you're looking at. It could be fake. It could be
stop.
Nonsense.
I don't want to believe this.
Well, I'm just saying. It was not proven by Galileo. I mean, it's not like he had a rocket ship that could go far enough up into the sky and prove that the Earth was round.
All right, so basically, here's what we need to do. Everybody needs to make friends with Elon, okay, so we can all get up in the spaceship and see the round-ass Earth for ourselves. Because I understand that apparently we have actually never seen a non-Photoshop picture of the Earth. John, have you heard this? You know what? Let me just ask it this way. John, you talk about how you've been getting, you call them downloads. You've talked to, I'm assuming, other beings, which we probably should talk about at some point, too, because that's really fascinating. Is the Earth round, bruh? Can you tell me, please?
Actually, the Earth is not round. Well, here's why. If you take all the water out of the Pacific Ocean, and if you take all the water out of all of the oceans, the Earth is far from round. But when you fill the planet with water, it becomes round. But if you look at all the celestial bodies out there, at least whether these photos are doctored or not, I can't prove or disprove it. But they're, for the most part, mostly round. I believe that I don't believe the Earth is flat, but the Pacific, at some points is like 8 or 10 miles or even deeper than that. We don't even know how deep the oceans are.
The ocean is scary.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even know how deep it is because we don't have vehicles that can travel that far. Now, E.T. has an anti-gravity envelope around their vehicle, and that's why it makes perfect sense for them to have bases deep underneath the ocean floor, because we can't get down there and go and find them. Our submarines will implode,
Right. I 100% agree with that. So with the them living down underneath the ocean with their little bubble in their craft.
And that's what Paola Harris was talking about during her presentation. She was the last speaker to go on that particular Sunday. Magnificent speaker. She's from Italy, and she did a lot of her research on the boot out there in Italy. And if you're Italian and you lived there in the last 20, 30 years, you believe in the fact that ETs are coming and going right in and out of the Aegean Sea. And what she said, to quote her, is that these space-time vehicles would, go into the ocean, but actually traverse the spirit of the planet and go into another dimension. These are her words. And I found that concept to be incredibly interesting and easy for me to believe also. And it was also happening off the coast of Sicily as well, and she did a ton of research on all this.
Now, here's my question to that, John. When she says another dimension, are we talking about a higher dimension, like a fifth or sixth dimension, or another parallel Earth, or another parallel universe?
Perhaps all of the above. I think that it's probably at least fifth or greater density. Yes, I tend to think that she is right, and that it's at least fifth density, fifth dimension. That, and this goes back to digging a hole in the earth. And if you're just a scientist, that's not opened spiritually to the possibility of being able to traverse your body, mind, spirit, you're just going to dig into a bunch of rocks. Same thing with the ocean, is that if you can traverse your body, mind, spirit, and the body, mind, spirit of your space-time vehicle, that these things are all possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, there could very well possibly be, as like you said, not just a base, but a colony of them living there for hundreds of thousands of years. And, these things, who's to say that they down there, they have a whole mining process in the bottom of the ocean where they're able to mine for uranium and stuff like that, the plutonium or whatever, to build these craft. to be able to fly them the way they do. I use this high power radiation, which has been a big common thing amongst UFO craft. So that would make a lot of sense for them being 8 to 10 miles down in the ocean. They could be doing all kinds of things because you got to dig for that stuff to get it. So,
well, I would think they would be flying out of the Pacific Ocean by now with all the Fukushima radiation leaking.
Yeah.
So either that, or it gave them a real big power boost. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they can use it.
Yeah, maybe they're feeding off of that.
Yeah.
There's also geothermal energy that comes from fissures. Which
absolutely. So I have a this possibly is a random question, but Jacko, you brought up the flat Earth, so this is your fault. You said that Earth is that it's not round. It's only round when you fill it with water. So then my question is, and this is possibly an ignorant question, but then my question is water required for a planet to be round shaped?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if you look at
so it's just ours.
I think that there's many Earths, and many of these Earths are habitable, largely because they do have water. I believe that every celestial body, for the most part out there, including many moons, are inhabited, but the surface temperatures, they vary too much. For example, on the surface of Mars, it can actually get up to 70 degrees, but in the same day in the same spot can go to minus 200 degrees.
Yep.
Oh, Jesus.
We're clearly, not capable of surviving in conditions like that unless we're in some kind of controlled biodome. Yeah. But I believe that most of these planets, these exoplanets, these moons, etc., that the life has gone inside of the planet.
Well, I've seen enough evidence to believe that there's life within Mars, from the glass tunnels that NASA's found on their missions. I mean, there's all kinds of evidence out there. There's greenery, which look like trees they found on parts of the surface. They've already said that there is water, within the surface of Mars. So I have no doubts whatsoever that we're eventually going to find out that there's not only habitable life on the planet, within the planet of Mars, living there, but might be even intelligent life. Hey, it might even be the Greys, or some form of the Greys that are living on Mars.
I agree with that completely. I saw Jason Martell at the Alien Snowfest at Big Bear in February this year. And he, during his presentation, he was showing pictures of lakes and rivers on Mars. That I've
seen photos of trees as well, too.
I've never seen that footage before, so it piqued my interest, that's for sure. And, opened up a whole new gamut of questions.
Mm-hmm. The glass tunnels really did it for me, though, John, to be honest with you. When I saw those photos of what looked like glass tunnels, tubes, it could be some kind of a highway system going within the planet. That's what did it for me. At that point, I was sold that there's habitable life out there.
Yeah, I mean, the Anunnaki colonized Mars before they colonized Earth. So, yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. I've always had a theory, or I've had a theory before, that life on Earth was seeded here by life on Mars. That Mars at one point was a lot like Earth, had, rivers, oceans, a lot like Earth. Temperatures were a lot closer to Earth. That some kind of a nuclear disaster happened there, maybe a nuclear war took place or something, and the beings that were there left the planet. Some went within the planet and inhabited the planet, whatever they, however many could, but that a lot of them went to Earth as the next planet over and seeded life here, and that could have been remnants of the Anunnaki that were around. Because remember, the whole thing with Planet X or Nibiru is that it comes around every 3,600 years. That's a long time for it to come around and around. So they have to be somewhere for that 3,600 years or 36,000 years, whatever it is. They have to be hiding somewhere in that time period if they're going to be around here seeding the planet. So why not Mars? Stick around close to the Earth, but yet far enough away that they're not as visible and we can't catch them easily.
Yeah, I agree, but here's something else to think about, is that the physical location of wherever Nibiru might be, supposedly it's going to come back around in the year 2900, so we got about 900 years. But that being said, that they have always been here and they have never left.
Right.
And that also when they travel here from Nibiru, they have space-time vehicles, so distance doesn't really make a whole lot of difference.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Yeah, I figure if you can make us, you probably can get here pretty easy.
Yeah, but the planet itself is still on its rotation, or whatever it is. In fact, and here's the kicker: I don't think.
Well, we're off our rotation now, aren't we?
Well, kind of. I guess. Well, the thing with Nibiru, I don't think that we're going to find it's just a planet. I think Nibiru is part of a second star system, and I think that NASA's kind of leaning towards this direction where it's part of a red sun, and that is the planet of the crossing. Right? It looks like a cross. That's what the biblical term for it is, planet of the crossing. I think it's actually partly a planet with that's circling a dwarf red sun. And I'm very, very strong. I'm very strong on this belief that that's what we're going to discover, and that's what's actually heading every 3,600 years towards us, a twin sun. Because we're finding more and more that star systems are binary star systems, and we haven't found ours yet because it's so far out there. But guess what? They did find a planet called Eris, which is in the same elliptical orbit as Nibiru. And this looks like a star system. It doesn't look exactly like a planet. It looks like a little miniature red sun with planetoids orbiting it, or little planets orbiting it. That is, I think, Nibiru. And we had Jacob Israel on not long ago who kind of said the same, echoed the same sentiment that, yeah, he thinks that's what that is. He thinks that's Nibiru. And that's, what we're going to end up discovering and announcing eventually, that planet Eris is Nibiru, and that is a little dwarf sun.
That's highly possible. I feel like our history is so important to know, especially if we were on Mars and Mars was like Earth, and then we're like, oops, we fucked this one up. Let's just go to the one down there. We'll call it Earth and we'll do it all over again. These are important. This history is critical for us not to screw because where are we going to go after we screw up Earth? Where are we going?
No, if you really want, yeah. Well, we're going to Mercury. We'll go to Mercury next. Get even hotter.
Oh, that's where we're going?
Yeah.
We're going to Mercury? Okay.
Yeah, why not? Here's a kicker, and I don't know if you guys have heard of Commander X. You're familiar with Commander X at all? No? Anybody?
No.
Today I am, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you look him up on YouTube, Commander X, put the lectures of Commander X that came out a few years ago. And part of the lectures of Commander X was talking about the history on the Earth and the inhabitants that came to Earth and helped seed men and yada, yada, yada. Kind of like the same story we're talking about here, right? The twist is that these inhabitants from another world, might have been the Anunnaki, might have been from Planet X. These inhabitants were actually from Earth originally, millions of years ago, that they left when the big rock hit and killed the dinosaurs. And that these were advanced dinosaurs that were actually intelligent, and they left the planet. And then when they came back, and this is why they're reptilian looking, when they came back, they found, a bunch of monkeys running around, and that's why they decided to stick around and genetically manipulate us, and that the Anunnaki actually are descendants of the dinosaurs that were here on the planet.
John, what do you think about that?
That's a crazy theory, but that's actually a theory that is proposed. What do you think of that, John?
The Anunnaki are descendants of dinosaurs? I'm not feeling that one.
They're like a descendant. I get it, like a land of the lost type of creatures,
Chaka is not happy right now.
No, that's John's cutoff point, y'all. That's it.
Chaka is not happy. Chaka is not happy.
By a vowel on this one. I'm just speechless.
I like the land of the lost scenario.
Oh my goodness! All right, so John, I have to ask you because we've really run the gamut tonight. You call yourself a reverend, and then we're talking about how Yahweh is an alien. How did you even get into this? What started this research? Because you're very well versed. So how did it start for you?
Yep.
My mom. I was able to grasp the concept of a multi-dimensional existence and extraterrestrials when I was like 5 years old. All from my mom. So I credit Mom. And I really didn't know anything about ancient aliens until the show came out in March of 2009. And I probably watched that show for probably four years before I started to believe it, because I grew up in church. I grew up in
Damn
church.
you, Sukalus.
Well, just like most of us, not everybody, but most of us, we went to church, and part of that brainwashing and programming and, conveniently omitting and ignoring the Old Testament of the Bible. I think it's really doing a disservice to Christianity, the fact that it's being ignored. The number one thing in disclosure is for us to understand that the gods are extraterrestrials. And until we can wrap our minds around that, we're going to remain in the dark and far from enlightenment. It's so important. It's the most important
I don't understand why it's so difficult. I mean, you'd rather believe this is this supernatural being than it's like this intelligent thing? I don't, like what? Like when
People, you know what it is? People want to have hope that there's something for them after this existence. That's what it is.
But you can follow that train of thought to there. I mean, you absolutely can, because I mean, I'm gonna go woo woo. Let me not.
Okay.
John, you take it. You take over, John.
There is a God. The most important thing in my life is God. Believe it or not, but it's just, God's not being portrayed in these religious texts. Extraterrestrials are. And that's the basic foundation of ancient alien astronaut theory. And it's not my concept, It goes back to Eric von Daniken, Chariots of the Gods in 1968, and Zecharia Sitchin, the 12th planet in 1976, and actually goes way back before them. Now here's something to think about. So, it's debatable how many people are on this planet, but supposedly around 6.5, 7 billion people. There's close to 2 billion or more people on this planet that believe that their gods were, in fact, extraterrestrials. Let's start off with the country of India. They got 1.3 billion people there. Right around 1 billion people practice Hinduism. And they clearly understand that Shiva, Rama, Brahma, Krishna, Vishnu, that they were extraterrestrials that came from the stars. I mean, they completely and totally know and understand that. Most Indian tribes, American Indian tribes, more specifically in the desert Southwest, they still worship to this day in their rituals the star people. Boyami is the extraterrestrial god for the Aborigines in Australia. There's different cultures all around the world that do believe in ancient alien astronaut theory. They just don't call it that. They just know that their gods came from the stars.
Have you ever heard of Michael Heiser?
Yeah.
Okay. He did a pretty convincing job of debunking Sitchin in a lot of his work, and kind of proving where he misled people in certain translations, especially dealing with the Hebrew language. And one thing that I always had an issue with Sitchin was that he wasn't a critically acclaimed scholar of language. He didn't have a diploma in language. He just kind of said, okay, this is what this means because I said so. That was an issue that I've always had with Sitchin, and Michael Heiser really did a good point in kind of pointing out some of the fallacies in Sitchin's work. Not to say that I don't believe that there were aliens that came, to this planet millions of years ago or thousands of years ago or whatever. I do believe that. I do believe there is an ancient astronaut tie-in to mankind. But a lot of what Sitchin wrote, I have an issue with because of the fact that he did mistranslate things to kind of fit his own narrative on the Anunnaki and Planet X and things like that. What are your thoughts on Michael Heiser, per se?
You know what? It was easy to rip apart his research from like a scientific method kind of standpoint. Sloppy research, sloppy translations, but some very key and core elements of his theory go back to what we've been talking about on your show tonight, is that the Anunnaki mixed their genetics with the indigenous primitive hominid species on this planet and fashioned a worker being, which we now call Homo sapiens. So, I mean, that part was definitely true.
Right.
Some of his other translations were easy to pick apart, and I have to agree with you. But if you go basically to the core of what he was talking about, I just mentioned it, that the Anunnaki came from Nibiru. It's debatable what Nibiru is, but whatever. It's Nibiru. And they manipulated our genetics to create what we are today, this new human model that we are today.
I have a question. If God is an extraterrestrial, why do we need to worship it?
Because the aliens want us to worship them. Because
why?
Good question.
I talked about this in the last show I did with you, is because they receive our prayer energy. There's so much power in prayer energy. And then also when we pass away, they actually acquire a part of our soul before it actually goes to the universal God light. And there's so much power in this. So let's say now that Enlil is not just doing this human creation experiment on our planet. Let's say he's doing it on perhaps 50 to 100 planets across the omniverse, since there is more than one universe. How much prayer energy and how many souls can you absorb, and how much does that increase your supernatural power within the cosmos?
Can you get overstuffed? But
hold on. But you figure that an alien race this advanced would come up with a little bit better way to harness power or energy than prayer.
What do you mean better? Better, Jackal. It's brilliant. Think. What are you talking about? This is like the biggest scam of the century. If he's correct, just think about how many people pray to a deity. Think about all that energy they're already getting. Why use something else? You literally convince the monkeys to pray to you, and now the monkeys are praying to you, and you're getting all this energy. Why do anything else?
I don't understand how much energy you can get from the monkeys praying compared to like a sun. And
well, we're not monkeys anymore. You know, I mean,
some of us are though, John. Some of us are.
Well, men are shaved apes, so let's just go in the first place.
Not literal monkeys. I don't mean monkeys in the literal sense. Like we're the monkey. I don't believe that we came from monkeys. I do believe that
we're the
engineered.
Monkeys.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know if
yes,
you can know that we are advanced enough to quantify and be able to measure it. But there's a lot of power in belief, and there absolutely is a lot of power in that. So, although I mean, it makes me absolutely not want to do it. Not that I do. I don't worship any deity. I recognize. I mean, my spirituality is. I recognize that there's a source. That's what I call it. But I don't worship it. I don't give my power away to anything.
We're almost out of time here, sadly enough, because we could go on forever with you, John. This is fascinating. But I will say this one thing, just to kind of end my rant on God. My theory of what God is, the eternal God, not the God of Yahweh or the Anunnaki, but the God that created the heavens, the earth, the universe, everything, that eternal being. I think that was a conscious energy source or force that existed maybe trillions and trillions of Earth years ago, in the middle of the void of space where there was nothing. It was just empty void. And it got very bored after a long period of time of just being there by itself. And it said, you know what? I'm bored. I'm going to create everything because this is boring just being here by myself. And it exploded into what we call the Big Bang. And then everything just happened as we conceive it to be. And that's why I believe that God is everywhere, and at the same time, He's nowhere. Like Yoda would say, He's within the rocks, within you, me, your spirituality, whatever you want to call it. God is a part of everything everything that we are. We have God within us, but it's not because He was an extraterrestrial, but because literally we all are part of this God, this universal consciousness that once existed a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That's my belief of what God was. And it still is. And when we die and we transcend to the next life, whatever that is, I do think that we go to that eternal source.
That was very woo-woo, Jackal. I'm very proud of you right now.
Huh? You like that?
That's very woo-woo. That was.
Very well thought.
Thank you. I had to throw in the Force there a couple times. I'm a Star Wars nerd. John, any final thoughts here on what I just said? Because I love compliments.
I would have to concur with your philosophy that that's basically my philosophy, that God is everything. God is all is God, outside of what we read in the Bible. And that it's the one common thread that links us all together. There is monotheism. There is one God, and I like to call this source, like Crystal called, or I'm an international metaphysical minister, and the basic construct of that whole discipline is the universal God consciousness. So we're all part of the universal God consciousness. So no matter what color we are, what race, religion, whatever, religion divides us. The universal God consciousness. That
so
concept.
politics. Sorry.
Religion is all politics. You're absolutely right there, Crystal. John, you've been awesome to talk to you, man. We had a blast meeting you in person, and having you on video was just awesome. Having you here on the show has been awesome. We have to have you back on because we could talk to you for about 4 hours. Sadly enough, we're a 2-hour show, so we have to start wrapping up here. But I want to give you a chance to kind of give the audience the name of your book again, where they can get it. If there's a website that you have that you want to go ahead and throw the name out there so people can follow your work, please go ahead and do so.
Okay, Yahweh, the Biblical God, is an Alien, and I have another book coming out. I told you about the blue beings at the UFO conference.
Yes,
This story is starting to slowly become viral, and I'm getting tons of airplay. Where that's all that the hosts want to talk about, because there was over 20 witnesses at this UFO conference to these blue-skinned shapeshifters. But all this can be found at johnpolkmedia.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Reverend Polk, johnpolkmedia.com, at Reverend Polk. Both my books will be able to be purchased. My next book should be coming out, I'm thinking, within the next couple weeks, hopefully. And if anybody wants to just straight up email me, it's jpolk2@cfl, like Central Florida, .rr.com. That's jpolk2@cfl.rr.com.
That was awesome, John. Thank you so much for being here with us. Guys, stick around. We got Dr. J coming up next right here on PSN Radio. Next week we have another live show for you. We're going to have, we're going to be live. Yes, indeed. We're going to be live.
We're going to be live until November 1st because he made events for them. Yeah,
I made events and I booked a ton of people. And you know why? Because I love you all, and I love being on here with you guys, and I love doing these shows. And next week, we're going to have another great episode. So stick around for Dr. J and come back next week. Till then, please keep looking up to the skies and keep questioning authority. Question them all. He's been lying to you from the beginning.
Stop giving your power away.
Yes.
That's right. No more Hillary clones.
And through Enoch, to me, really masking himself until I was more spiritually mature enough to be able to understand and fathom. This was the great Anunnaki elder who basically first started to create human beings on this planet.
Wow, and even Merlin the magician, how did you connect that dot?
Yeah, it's in the literature. Merlin was supposedly capable of levitating stones, and then he actually helped build Stonehenge, Woodhenge, and the Superhenge. They have since found all these henges all through that part of England that they didn't even know before. But now with the ground-penetrating radar that came about in the 1950s, they're finally starting to find all these other henges. But also Merlin's function was to get all the people of the British Isles to stand behind King Arthur. That's how he was able to draw the sword from the stone and some other miraculous feats, because they had to make him almost superhuman so that people would want to worship him as their king. And it worked.
Now, a lot of folks, I've read the story of King Arthur and the Sorcerer's Stone and Merlin the Magician. And, I've always taken that to be mythology. I never thought that it actually was real, per se. How far apart are we talking about from when the Anunnaki landed here to when Merlin and how far apart was that exactly chronologically? Talking about maybe millions of years, right?
Yeah, the annals of Cambrai date this probably back, I don't know. I'm making an educated guess. Perhaps maybe 1,000 or more years. I can't be exact, so don't hold me to that.
Looks at me cross-eyed like I'm crazy. And to hear somebody write a book about it and, say, it echoes some of the things I've been saying. No, I never said Yahweh or the Anunnaki, but I do think that God is, by the mere definition of God, he's an alien. And, your book, I'm dying to get through it and go through it and read it, because I think it's going to be enlightening, especially for the fact that you threw in a lot of stuff in there that I'm interested in, like the Anunnaki and stuff like that. But let's delve right into it, because, some of the audience here have not seen the interview yet. They have not seen the video. They didn't, check out the MUFON convention. They weren't there. So they weren't like standing around gawking at us while we were talking to you. Tell the audience a little bit about the book and exactly what the book is all about.
Okay, so Yahweh, the biblical God, is an alien. Yahweh, in effect, is Enlil of the Anunnaki. I've been using the term creator God aliens. Creator God aliens are ascended masters in the universe that fall, or they look at a planet like the Earth and they see potential for hybridization programs, also for purposes of mining it for its precious gems, ores, raw materials, etc. So Anu and the Anunnaki descended from the skies to the planet Earth, perhaps even millions of years ago, and they needed gold to repair the atmosphere of their planet Nibiru. Now there's a lot of debate and contention. Is Nibiru kind of like the Death Star on Star Wars, or is it an actual planet? In the end, they needed gold, and they were mining it themselves, and they realized that it was such a toil and taxing on their body. But the Anunnaki, in my opinion, have been on this planet for perhaps even millions of years. Michael Cremo, who has authored a very world-famous book called Forbidden Archaeology, and if you've ever seen his stand-up lecture series, he's absolutely genius and fascinating. He actually has an artifact that shows intelligence as far as artwork and artistry and craftsmanship in this little artifact that he has found. And he found it in North America. Or let me rephrase that. It was found in North America. And somehow he got his hands on this object, and he carries it with him to his lectures. And this object is dated at 2.8 billion years old. And it's very clear that it was made under some kind of intelligence. Were they extraterrestrials? Did they create a human-like hybrid, 2.8 billion years ago? I can't be sure. But the artifact itself is a statement and a testament to how old and how long the human creation story has been going on this planet.
Well, people do say that the Prometheus movie might be very close to what's actually happened.
I've heard that, yeah.
Comment on that.
I know the story behind Prometheus, but I have never seen the movie. I'm sure that it would be fascinating.
Well, the very beginning he shows
absolutely worth the watch.
It's a good movie, especially the beginning. He shows the alien race that lands on Earth, and one of them takes a potion which is going to destroy his body, and he falls into a waterfall, and his body disintegrates into the waterfall, given water DNA and creating all life on Earth.
To physically mine gold and other precious minerals from the Earth plane. So they decided to mix their DNA with the indigenous species of hominids, with more like Neanderthal man back then. At first, Enlil just wanted to flood the Earth and kill them all and create his own model human. And Enki and their sister Ninmah, who they both had children with, believe it or not, within the Anunnaki pantheon, approached Enlil and said, we don't have to kill off this indigenous species. We can mix our DNA with them and create a model worker so that we don't have to do all the mining of the gold ourselves. So that's actually what they did.
How did you connect the dots between Yahweh and the Anunnaki?
Okay, so a number of years ago, Enlil first came to me as Enoch, who is also known as the Archangel Metatron, who is in effect the scribe of the gods. Enoch was actually the great-grandfather of Noah. And Noah, along with Jesus Christ and Buddha and Wang Di, the first emperor of China, and even Merlin the magician, were all virgin births. So first he came to me as Enoch, a couple years removed. My conscious mind started to receive downloads that he was in effect Yahweh, who is the biblical God portrayed in the Old Testament. And then a couple years after that, I figured out this whole time that Enlil was communicating through Yahweh.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Skywatchers Radio, and yes, we are live. I know that a lot of folks this last 2 weeks were messaging me on private, and they're like, what the hell, man? What the hell? I gave up a hot date.
When we're not here.
Yeah, I gave up this hot date to listen in, and you guys are not even live? Screw you guys, man. But no, we're live, everybody. We're live.
All our listeners should hang out in the chat room, by the way, because there is a chat room, and it's been very quiet lately, and that makes me sad.
Because they're kind of mad at us because, we weren't live the last couple of weeks. But we're here now. We're live, and we have our guest on the line, Mr. John Polk. And John, of course, is a Reverend who wrote a book about Yahweh being an alien. How does that work? Welcome to the show, John.
Jesus is a hybrid.
Well, we'll get to that. Thank you very much. John, welcome to Skywatchers Radio, my friend. Thank you so much for being on here with us tonight.
Hey, it's our second show together, and I'm excited.
You know what?
That's
it is
right.
our second.
Technically,
It is technically our second show together. That's absolutely correct. And you know what? I'll tell you what, man. I had so much fun at the MUFON convention. Meeting you, meeting Alejandro, meeting everybody who was over there was phenomenal. Your interview was one of the most fun interviews because, and I'm not just saying that to kiss your ass because you're on the air with us. That's not why I'm saying it. The reason I say it is because I've been saying that God is an alien for years, and everybody